Okay. All right, I'm going to try to talk pretty loud so this thing can hear me. Can you stop talking here? Stop talking. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, we're working towards our grade sheet. This will be in Schoology, so you can see it. It'll also be up in the room. And we're working towards submitting 4 bowls. So this would be an example of I have 4 that I want to submit, and I'm working towards 40 points each. Also, we remember that it's a weighted grade, so if you can't get to exemplary at this point, it won't ruin your grade. So you'll gradually move farther and farther, but you can resubmit. You can resubmit this like all the way to the end of the year. Like, hey, I want to resubmit those bowls to try and get the 160 points. So we're basically looking for 4 that match in some way, but they should follow these parameters, like for exemplary. So I'm not going to go into that here, but you'll be able to see that. For example, if they were cups, they might be cups like this. So these 4 cups go together. These are more or less the same. I use the same weight. The bowls are the same. I use the same weight. Made them basically look the same. Then I kind of went to this. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to set up like a challenge for myself to come up with like a new handle for these coffee mugs. So these aren't exactly the same, but they still qualify as a set. They could have been different weights, different sizes, but we want them to have something in common. Like here, most are fine, look and feel matching in size, shape, or other distinct characteristics. So they're going to have some commonalities. So we'll go from bowls to plates to cups, and then you can work on any of that stuff at any given time. As your stuff starts to come out, these are the ones that are starting to come out for the group. What I want you to consider with the glazing, I use an iron oxide on these. This kind of warms up the bottom. And basically in just a plain gas kiln or an electric kiln, the clay looks a little bit dead on the bottom. So this kind of warms it up, especially when it's fired. This is an example of that fired iron oxide. It also highlights the date, like the name stamp and the date, which is pretty helpful when you're looking for your work. So this is all iron on the outside. This is your iron oxide. I'm keeping it in this bin. Iron oxide gets on everything. If it gets on you and your clothes, it's staining your clothes. So this is one of the pigments that's used to stain anything that's like red, black. So we want to be careful with that. We want to keep just these few brushes to use it. So this one I did this morning. You're basically going to apply it. You may want to stir it up, and as this dries out, it may need some water too. So this just kind of goes on. It sort of paints on really easily. And then if I use a sponge, it also comes off really easily. So as I do this, and I kind of wipe this with a sponge, thank you, kind of highlights those areas. So it kind of highlights this depending on how dark you want it. Then here, this is what it looks like finished. And you might be like, ew, I don't want my piece to look that way. You don't have to. But that's one way you can do this. So this is just used to kind of warm up the bottom so it isn't just dull clay. That's it. Some of these, like I put a little glaze in the bottom here. It's not a great idea to glaze the foot or right up to the foot, because then you're risking this glaze kind of moving and your whole piece sticking and you're losing a bowl because it's all trashed. So you want to consider that, and as you start to glaze, you'll get used to doing those things. Okay, next. These bowls have a wax line. They have a wax line here at the top and also here. So these, the commercial glazes we're using, some have variation, some don't. This one has a bit less variation. So a little bit of a wax line in there creates this little halo between the glaze and warms up the way the pot looks. Here, also, a little bit of a halo coming off, sometimes from the wax and sometimes from this glaze, just sort of, I don't know what you'd call it. It basically looks like it halos off the glaze. So that part is actually a little bit glazed. And again, that has that warm look. So I'm going to do a quick example here. The best way to do this is on the pottery wheel because it will keep turning for you. We're going to center this just like we do when it's on the wheel. So if we tap it like this, it's off center. And if we gradually tap it, it gets to kind of as middle as it's going to be. Our wax, I'm just keeping in one of these butter containers. This is a powdered wax with water kind of blended into it. When it dries up, it just kind of looks like yellow beeswax. Looks like big boogers. You can make like fake boogers. Teach your friends. So this is kind of a liquid. You want to be careful because wherever you get this on your piece, it is not coming off. We can fire it, so like this will burn off, but somehow the residue is still there until 2200 degrees. I don't really know how. Sometimes if I mess up, I put it in, try to re-biscuit to burn the wax out, and then somehow the glaze still reacts to it. So it doesn't really fully disappear till we're at like 2200 Fahrenheit. Kind of leaves this residue. So the reason I do this again is to just break up that surface. So we're going to just turn this thing on here, and we're going to do a couple wax lines. So this you want to do carefully, like if this sprays all out, no glaze is going to stick to that spot. And you're going to be kind of bummed that you made a mess in that thing. So this creates this line. It's harder to see on that one. So it creates that little line. I also do one up here, even though there's no glaze, because I like to glaze right up to that wax line. So if you think of waxing a car, how the water beads up, the same thing, the glaze will pull away from that line to give you like a nice sharp line. So this can also help with creating designs and continuity to help your pieces look similar if maybe in the throwing they're not totally similar. We want to be careful where we use this, how we use this, just because it's going to get all over everything. So if it's like on the table and then you lean on the table, it's all over you, and then it's on your pants and it's everywhere. Even if it's on the apron, then it gets back on you. So try to use this at the sink, especially because typically we wipe some off anyway to highlight. So it's helpful to be at the sink. So all of this will be at the sink. And I try to leave small amounts, like the wax has a small amount, this has a small amount, because if these dump, we don't want to lose a ton of material. Another thing is, the best way to clean these is microwaved water. So like this doesn't really clean out unless it's boiling water. So I have a little cup over there that has little feet on it. You can fill it with water, nuke it for a minute, squirt it in here, and then this will clean out really well. Also, if you do wax designs with brushes, same thing. Okay. Oh, one last thing. This is a roller. You can see through it. So there's a little directions here. You're starting with a cylinder of clay, then you're carving. Now I have something I can roll into my clay. So this is like those nice silicone rollers we have, but you get your own design, and no one else's will look the same. And even really simple stuff looks pretty cool when you roll it into pieces. So here's a good example. These are some student works. Like here, it could be like, okay, Mr. T, these are my first 4. And then you're deciding where they are, beginning, developing, accomplished, exemplary. You know, like this is going into developing, getting into a trimmed foot, but there isn't any other. I would say the design's coming out. Like this kind of matches this rim, and it's moving along. The thickness is pretty good, consistent, and then these are like catching up to that one. This one's getting closer. This was the one from the mold, the demo. These are looking